Welcome back. A pivotal state Supreme Court election next spring holds the power to fundamentally change the balance of power on Wisconsin's High Court. With Justice Pat Roggensack not running for a third term, the conservative majority of 4-3 could flip. Announcing a run at the seat this week, Dane County's own Circuit Court Judge Everett Mitchell, who presides over the court's juvenile division and oversees its drug court program. He's also a pastor and UW Law School adjunct professor. Judge, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's just start with your background. I just referenced you are the presiding judge over the juvenile division in Dane County Circuit Court. How does that background impact what you will be bringing, what you would bring if elected to the state Supreme Court?
Well, first, let me just tell you a little bit about myself so that you can know a little bit about me. As a young man, I grew up with all the narratives that many people say you have to have. One of my favorite quotes is, do not follow the path that has been given. Instead, go to where there is no path and leave a trail. And as a young man, I grew up not struggling with reading. I had all of the single mother, all of the profiles. But you know what? I never gave up. And I think the energy and the success that we've seen here in Dane County brought that empathy and love to make sure that we be able to bring a diverse set of ideas and diverse set of people into our court system so that we can be able to effectuate change and balance. Specifically in Dane County, we really have work with our youth to bring collaboration with law enforcement, with families, parents, children, communities of faith communities, as well as community members to really think about different ways to approach how we deal with our youth and our families so that we really do create an outcome that really is beneficial and protects victims as well as make sure that our children are seen as whole.
Did you grow up here in Wisconsin?
I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. So I moved to Wisconsin over 18 years ago. And since I moved here, really have kind of dedicated myself to really making Wisconsin not only home, but, home for my children, my wife and I. And we've really found ourselves attached to, becoming a Wisconsinite.
What brought you to Wisconsin from Texas? Big weather change.
It is a huge weather change, but I had got a little adjusted to it when I was at Princeton. I finished graduate school at Princeton and moved here to, at that time in 2004, and then we moved here in 2004 and just really started trying to work on different pieces. Really struggled here to find a job, worked at Pizza Hut delivering pizzas, and even though I had a master's degree from Princeton and degree from Morehouse, but never gave up on my dream of really working and promoting justice in this community.
How would you describe your approach to applying the law? For example, what are your thoughts on the originalist approach when interpreting the Constitution?
Well, obviously, I think there are different approaches that different people use to really pay attention. I think the originalist approach, but it's also a living approach to what the Constitution means. I think as an African-American, thinking about how the Constitution was framed without us, even the idea of slavery that was not included in the very language of the Constitution itself, but yet was a reality of it. You want a document that both speaks to the living opportunities for how, our culture will change and how does that mean for us. And I think, whether it's the originalist interpretation or what I call a living interpretation, which allows for those who are looking at the Constitution to see that it evolve as we evolve. And I think that's the purpose of the amendments, to allow us to be constantly reshaping what we think about when we think about the law.
And how do you view some of the High Court's more controversial decisions of the past couple of years? I mean, for example, what comes to mind is the overturn of the statewide mask mandate, other decisions made throughout the pandemic.
A lot of these decisions that sometimes, and I think that's why a lot of us are, very interested in trying to just have different questions about what the Supreme Court, it seems like it's wrapped in partisanship. And we really don't want a court that is really so partisan that people can anticipate what the decisions will be. I think it is about thinking about all Wisconsinites and being able to listen to those voices and ensuring that those voices are meeting the legal standards as well as the Constitution of our state. And so, while there may be those who disagree or those who agree, the goal is to make sure that when people hear from the court, that they hear a sense of legitimacy and purpose and power and that they trust. And so what I'm running to do is to reestablish that sense of trust. Just like I've done in Dane County, I want to reestablish that trust for our Supreme Court so that when people hear and see that decision that comes, then they feel comfortable and trust that decision as opposed to what we have right now.
You mentioned Justice, you shouldn't know how they will rule. How do you foresee yourself working with someone like Justice Brian Hagedorn, who has surprised, the conservatives who backed him on the court with some of his decisions in the past couple of years? Do you foresee that as being a role you would play?
I think, Justice Hagedorn and I almost started at the same time. When I was a judge, he was just appointed to his role at the same time. So I think the role of a judge is to listen. And you have to listen to the facts. You have to pay attention to the facts. I don't think people want robots. I think they want justices who they know when they sit down to present their case that they would be fully heard. That's what I promise to bring to the court, is that ability to listen and hear everybody's case and pay attention to the nuances of it, and then bring a whole reasoning to it that is not rooted in just making a decision that's, because some outside influence tells me this is what I should do.
You've been outspoken in the wake of the Uvalde shooting about gun violence, how to address that in the community. I think you mentioned at a recent event. How are you encouraging people to combat that? And what would be perhaps how your own actions on the court would interface with the issue of gun violence?
I will say that as a pastor, I've had to bury children who have been, murdered as a result of gun violence. So this is very personal to me, and I feel the passion of it. As a licensed gun owner myself, carry and conceal, have my carry and conceal permit. I'm not in the business of trying to take people's guns, but the killing of innocent children, the killing of innocent African Americans who are just at a grocery store, or the shooting of Taiwanese doctor who's at church, or just like we just saw in Oklahoma, going into a medical facility and taking lives. That's something different. That's taking innocent lives who are not in the war zone. So this is not just about gun violence. This is about understanding violence that is being put upon innocent people who are not asking to be involved in that violence. And so there are many different solutions. One we talk about is just, contacting legislators, but most importantly, just having conversations in communities so that we see each other as human beings and we don't continue to perpetuate more violence in our communities. More innocent lives, more innocent children's lives, and we should not continue to have to build more small caskets for babies every 4 years.
Anything you'd like to add?
I just want the Wisconsin community to know that I'm excited for them to get to know me and me get to know them, because justice is not what we say, it's what we do. And in Wisconsin, I believe justice is completely possible.
Judge Mitchell, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. We will be right back.